You're listening to Track Talk with the RacinBoys, brought to you by McCarthy Chevrolet in Olathe, or visit them online at McCarthyChevyKC.com.
Welcome back. I'm Kirk Elliott. Scott Traylor in Texas. Rick Beebe sitting in studio. And if any of you are listening in this morning need an explanation of who Rick Beebe is, then you haven't been around racing very long. That's all I can say. Rick Beebe is one of the legendary racers here in Kansas City. Raced with the old ASA series for many, many years. Has got extensive experience on pavement and dirt and has won. I don't know how many races you have won. Rick, do you know how many races you have won in your career?
You know, Scott, a lot of guys keep track of that. That's something I've never kept track of. Couldn't have you tell you a clue of how many races I've won, but I've lost a lot more than I've won. I can tell you that. But
hasn't everybody, right, Rick?
Yeah.
I mean, most people lose more than they win.
Yeah, and it's getting tougher. You know, trying to run with these young kids in the USMTS every night. It's difficult. I mean, if I can ever win one of those things, I'd really be tickled. We've been fortunate enough to be able to win about every touring series we've raced in, and I haven't come near to winning a USMTS race yet. So hopefully one of these nights we can get her hooked up and have a little luck and maybe get it done. That would be a nice feather in the cap of my career. So
I know where you won your last pavement race.
You know, I'm glad you know, because I don't even know. Was that in your modified, Scott?
I think it was.
Yeah, that might be, because I know
I don't know, because I don't think you ran any pavement after that.
Oh, yeah, I ran ASA after that, but I never won an ASA race after that. The last ASA race I won was in 98. So, yeah, I did win the last pavement race in your car.
Was that at I-70 Speedway?
It sure was.
Yeah.
I still have that picture.
2001.
One of my favorite pictures I have in my collection of pictures, I still have it up in my living room, is winning that race with all the kids there with us. Scott, you remember that?
Yeah, and had Mark from Praxair, Mark Adams, my good buddy, was there with us as well.
You and I and Mark and Burr and Ed Butler and all the old guys, the ASA team, were all standing there, and we had kids. We had looking at all the kids now. They've all grown up and have kids of their own. Some of them by now. So that was a fun night. We had a great time.
Well, something else that you have on your career, you were Jimmy Johnson's teacher when you were in the ASA. When Jimmy Johnson came into the ASA, you were his driving coach, were you not?
Well, you know, it's kind of cool because in my career, I was fortunate enough to get to, when I got to pavement racing, and especially in ASA, I got to race with all the guys that were my heroes when I was a kid, guys like Bob Seneker and Mike Eddy, Mike Miller, I could name them forever, and then the guys of my era, you know, that ran fairly well, and then I became the rookie instructor in ASA. I'm not sure what year, but I was the rookie instructor for 7 years. So if you count backwards from
93,
04,
maybe.
Somewhere 94. I think 94 became the rookie instructor, and it was kind of neat because you know that later in ASA a lot of the high dollar teams were tutoring their guys in ASA, and so Jimmy was one of my first students that actually General Motors kind of pushed him through the system. And I can remember Jimmy's first race. It was a Peach State down in Georgia, down in Atlanta. And Jimmy spun out 6 times and I think hit everything but the pace car. And about halfway through his first season in 98, he came to me one time. He said, I just don't think this stock car racing's for me. He said, I don't think I'm ever going to get this figured out. And I told him at the time, I said, dude, you got a lot of natural talent. I said, you just need to have some patience. And look at him now, 5-time. I mean, that guy's come a long way.
Who would have thought that?
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
Well, it's amazing, isn't it, though, Rick? I mean, because even at the nationwide level, he really didn't have that great of a career. But when he got tied up with Hendrick and moved over to the Cup side, it's like that light bulb just came on really bright, didn't it?
I think what happened with Jimmy was not only going to Hendrick and having the equipment and support he had there, but Jeff Gordon's support
mentorship.
Too.
Right?
Yeah, he was mentored by Jeff Gordon, and Jeff stuck his neck out and paid for half that team and got Jimmy in it, and man, the rest has been history. He just he really took off and did a heck of a job. And then another kid that was one of my students and one of many that are in Cup now, but Kyle Busch, and I know Kyle Busch is a controversial driver with a lot of people, but not only does he have an incredible amount of natural talent, probably more so than anybody I've ever seen, but you got to give Kyle Busch credit for what he's doing in his career now. I mean, he's a smart dude, and he has got a lot going on. I mean, he owns, truck team, nationwide team, driving for Gibbs full time. And not only that, I think a lot of people don't realize Kyle Busch Motorsports build chassis they build trucks, they build nationwide cars, and they build Cup cars. So for a young man that is racing as much as he is, he's got a lot going on. He is a racer. I mean, he's a lot like Tony Stewart, man. He is just a hardcore racer.
I'm surprised how good a businessman he's become.
Yeah, he has. He's matured so much, and I don't want to go either way with Kurt, but it just seems like Kyle has kind of realized how he needs to behave and the way he needs to structure his career, be it as an owner or a driver. He's done very well, I think. I'm proud of the guy. And away from the racetrack, he's really a nice guy. He is not probably like a lot of people think he is. He's not cocky. He's a cool guy. He does a good job.
I went to several of those Ron Varney ASA races, when we had the super trucks, and he'd bring his late model program in, and he was always really cool, man, and just kind of one of the guys down in the pits. And, when I tell people he's one of my top 5 favorite drivers, they always cringe. But until you get to know him, you really don't know him. That's what I tell everybody. Now, can he be a little over the top at times? Yeah, but he's nowhere near what his brother is. I mean, he's far from what his brother is. Now, some people would say, well, what happened with him in Hornaday? That wasn't too cool. No, it wasn't too cool. But I promise you one thing. Kyle Busch will learn from his mistakes far better than his brother Kirk has.
Yeah, and his
brother Kirk is not learning from his mistakes.
I know.
Kyle, every time he has one of these big moments, he seems to gain something from that.
Well, that and he's got mentorship from Joe Gibbs too, so I'm sure that helps quite a bit.
Sure.
And
yeah.
Not that Penske wouldn't have been good for Kurt. It's just
or Jack Roush.
Yeah, it's just I'm not sure that you can fix Kurt. He's an awesome race car driver, but I noticed you guys had a poll on RacinBoys, looking on it this morning early, and how many people think that Kurt may be out of NASCAR, out of Cup within 5 years. I'm thinking it might be sooner than that if he doesn't get his act together.
Well, they say it's overwhelming, about 80%. Yes, he'll be out of Cup within 5 years.
I'm kind of like everybody else. I think there's a very good chance that could happen. But my thing is that his brother with this Monster money, Monster kind of likes these guys with a little edge, and I don't think he'll let his brother sit on the wayside. If he's needing a driver for his team, his brother, he might be relegated back to a Nationwide Series driver, and his brother might even take his Nationwide team and take it up to the Cup level so his brother can race there because they know they could be competitive. So I think that possibility is going to happen.
I agree, Scott. I think there's, and I'm sure that Kyle has aspirations of going to Cup, and it's like you said, Monster probably, a lot of these energy drinks kind of like the edgy drivers and that because they're catering to a younger crowd. And the thing about it is, though, I think some of them might like a younger, edgy driver. So I don't know. I just seen so many of these guys like Jeremy Mayfield's a prime example of a guy that had an awesome ride, and I don't know what it is about Penske, but he seems to hook up with some of these guys that end up not paying him the respect that they should, and then they end up out of racing. And look how quick Jeremy Mayfield fell out. And of course, I wouldn't compare him to Kurt Busch because Kurt Busch is a much more intelligent, in my opinion, classy guy than that. But you just need to learn to control his mouth with the reporters and understand that those guys are just doing their job.
Whoever would have thought that Jeremy Mayfield, we'd be talking about him as the meth addict?
Yeah,
I mean, really, just think about that for a second. When they had that television show on, and him and his wife and everything, and who would have ever dreamed in a million years that guy was messed up on meth? I never would have. Of all people, he wasn't the one I would have picked.
Yeah, and he seemed like for a while he did a great job, not only driving, but he's a clean-cut guy, and he was good interview, and it's just a shame. I feel for people like him because he had a heck of a deal going and lost it all.
Threw it all away.
Yeah, it's a good example maybe for younger people to see what that kind of stuff can do to you, not only physically but your career. But
this goes back to the intelligence you were talking about, Jeremy Mayfield. Not much when you try to take on the power of NASCAR and think you're going to win.
Yeah, that's like taking on the mafia usually.
But if you've known anybody that has a substance abuse problem like he has, he hasn't probably thought with a clear mind for years. And anytime you're in that haze, You're in denial. I've known people that have been on that stuff. They're in denial. They don't believe that they have a problem. And I think that that's where Jeremy Mayfield is in his life. He doesn't believe even, or maybe better yet, he believes his own lies.
Yeah, I think people believe that, and also I think it seems like the people that I've known that have had substance abuse problems have anger problems too. And, when they get accused of something, it's like you said, Scott, I'm not sure they even believe what's going on themselves.
A defense mechanism pops up when people accuse them of that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. It's just a shame to see it with any athlete. But, I like Kurt Busch too, though. I hope he gets his act together because he's a good talent. And NASCAR needs some edgy drivers. We don't need to see those guys out there just talking the same old stuff when they get out of the car. I was kind of tickled at Dale Jr.'s interview last week. I don't know how many people have.
Can we start this over again? He said with Ralph Sheehy.
Yeah. I think Ralph was, or was it Ralph or Bob Dillner? I guess it was Ralph.
Yeah.
But it's almost like I don't think he was kind of taken aback by that. I'm not sure he knew what to say. That Ralph even knew what to say.
Dale Jr. looked a little bit out of sorts right there.
He did. It was like he was like he really wasn't thinking clearly. I don't know.
I tell you what it was. I think what it was is that he was listening to the question, but he didn't hear it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think when he went to answer it, he probably couldn't remember what the question was, and so that's when he paused. And he was probably sitting there thinking, "What was that question?"
Well, he's had a little trouble with the media.
Now, can we start over?
Yeah. He hadn't any problem driving the race car this year, though. He's doing well, and I think he's going to win one here.
Yeah, and that brings us to this question. He's running very fast at Michigan. They had the test sessions at Michigan, after they repaved the racetrack that allowed these guys to come in and get a handle on that racetrack, and he is one of the fast cars. He's second in points right now, which is absolutely remarkable when you consider where he's been and now where he's at. It's been 4 years to the weekend that he posted his last win, which was at Michigan. Is this the weekend that he finally gets that first win after 4 years? Boy, I think he could do it.
Yeah, very well could. I think last weekend their fuel strategy just kind of hurt him a little bit. But, Junior's not only contending for wins, but possibly contending for a championship this year. And it's neat to see him do well. I know the fans really like him, and it'd be great for NASCAR and for him to get a win. And it'd be great to get one on Father's Day at Michigan. And what a better place to do it. He's very capable. So we'll just,
what happens if he wins that race, though, right? Conspiracy theory guys, NASCAR, he wins on Father's Day, his first win in 4 years. He wins it for his dad, who's looking down on him. I can hear all the storylines now.
No, yeah, but you kind of have that in anything, don't you, Scott? It's,
I guess so.
Those of us that know racing know that one thing about racing that I know is that it's not any type of racing
fixed.
I've ever been around. It's not fixed. It is what it is, and it's hardcore, and stuff isn't always what it looks like on television. So
if you're looking at the speed charts and think this is going to be fixed if he somehow wins the race, you're just not looking at what's going on. You'd have a theory like that if he was not running well, not even close to leading any laps or running up front. Yeah, you might come up with that kind of a theory, but not as fast as he's running right now. He's a player at this race tomorrow. There's no doubt about that.
I think this race tomorrow is going to be really boring.
Yeah, I got to agree with you, Scott.
I think it's going to be really boring.
I think it's not for the drivers, but for us as fans. For the drivers, it'll be white-knuckling it.
Too much grip and single-file rate. They get spread out, especially with those kind of speeds of over 200 mile an hour. They're going to get spread out.
But here's the thing about Michigan. Even when it is widened out with the old pavement, when they ran from top to bottom, still kind of boring because long green flag runs lead to spread out racing, which leads to a boring race. Restarts are fantastic at that racetrack because they can go 3 and 4 wide. But once they get spread out, it's just not that good. Now with the groove being really narrow, if you watched anything on practice, you could see where the black groove was right through the center of the track, and guys weren't venturing out of that groove. Now, we might have a bunch of yellows because people are crashing and the restarts might be good, but if that doesn't happen and they all decide to follow the leader for a while because they're worried about this tire, NASCAR's relegated a new tire out for the race, a new left side tire. I guess they were blistering their lefts. I think a lot of guys are going to be worried about the tire, the groove being narrow, the high speeds, narrows up the groove in itself. I just don't see it being a very good race.
And are we going to have engine problems, too, going at those kind of speeds and probably long green flag runs?
Yeah, how do you not have engine problems? Turning those kind of RPMs wide open all day, these NASCAR engines, turn them 9,500. They were turning them over 10,000 at Pocono last weekend when they're shifting gears. It's amazing engine technology today. The lack of failure that they have compared to what we did back in the day when they were turning them 3,000 RPM less than that. But just commonplace nowadays to turn an engine 9,500, and they talk like, well, that's not too bad. 9,500 is feasible. That's crazy.
Rick, didn't you go up there with an ASA car that one year? Were you up there when they did that?
No, that was before I was racing full-time in ASA when they went to Michigan. And what I do remember
Johnny
about
Benson blew the body off.
That was actually Saint Amant. Saint Amant got.
Oh, Saint Amant, that's right. Yeah.
He got turned around going in the corner, and the whole entire body came off the car. Air got under the back of it and just ripped the whole body off of it. That was
in one piece.
Yeah, it was. The whole thing came off, and he was still driving around there in a chassis. That was crazy looking. But that was kind of ASA's first venture to a speedway, and when they did go back to the speedways in 03 and 04, they did a lot better. They were way more prepared than what they were at that time. But still, those cars are not designed to run 190 mile an hour. Mm-hmm. They're not safe at that speed. So
right.
Yeah. Well, we are going to talk more about what's going on in Michigan. I'd like to hear from you, 913-381-810. Rick Beebe sitting in with us here, and he'll be with us as well, hour number 2, exclusively on RacinBoys.com. So stay with us. Scott Traylor is down in Texas. I'm Kirk Elliott here in Kansas City. We want to hear from you, 913-381-810. You're listening to the Racing Boys on Sports Radio 810 WHB.